Certainly there are the veterans' homes themselves, which I am sure managing are a full-time job in and of itself. But I'd like to focus you on this whole issue of mental health in veterans, because we talk a lot about it, and we also know that by definition, a lot of people return back wounded, not only in body, but in spirit and sometimes in mind. And my question to you is, are you meeting across cabinet or department agencies in this state government with others responsible for community-based mental health? And if not, why not?
Sir, we are, and that's a very good question. We collaborate with other state agencies across the spectrum. We have MOUs with Health and Human Services, Public Health. Last month I met with the CDCR director. I meet with him next Monday to discuss methods to assist inmates that are being released from prison who are veterans. We are working with other state agencies to ensure that we do the best we can. Working with DMV on the driver's license initiative, and that is an initiative whereby when individuals renew their license or apply for a new license or California ID, they can indicate on the registration form that they are a veteran. If they are, then information is sent to that address, which would be a good address, and that information is provided to us. We will send them information on how to acquire services. We think that over a 5-year period, we can reach at least 5 million people. Of course, all are not veterans, but we would have access to them, their address, and be good addresses. We work with all the veteran services organizations in the community. There's a lot of them, and they're doing the same things we are. They have the same interests that we have, that is the veterans, assisting veterans.
Let me okay.
So to answer your question, sir, we're reaching across state government to various agencies to help and assist us with this challenge.
I'm wearing a pin right here, paid advertisement. It's Cal Mesa. This is a pin that represents the California Mental Health Services Act of 2004, which I was a proud sponsor of. It's bringing in about $1 billion of funding for community mental health every year. Are you familiar with the act?
Sir, we have a, I'm not familiar with the act and its proponents of it, but we do have a collaboration with mental health in state government to assist us in reaching out to veterans who have challenges with mental health and also with dependencies that arise from mental health, PTSD, TBI, sure, and the like.
Just the very briefest description. There's about $1 billion a year. About $200 million a year is spent on statewide initiatives, suicide reduction, stigma and discrimination reduction, and student mental health. The remainder of the money is allocated to the counties for counties to determine their priorities and which populations are most in need of whatever it takes mental health services. I know that there are some counties that are focused on veterans, but I know not every county or the majority of county are focused on veterans. And I would just encourage you, as I encourage others in your department, to get intimately involved with the implementation of the Mental Health Services Act and to be working very closely with Secretary Dooley and the other partners at the state level to make sure that the veterans, and especially the veterans that are out on the street, get their fair share of this money, because it's one of the few instances here in California where we actually have money and new money and recurring money to be able to address the obviously very serious issues of homelessness and mental illness in our society. And so you need to commit to me that you're going to get to know this act, you're going to meet with its stakeholders, and you're going to do everything you can to advocate that veterans get their share of this money.
Sir, you have my commitment to that. I'm committed to that as I am committing other issues with veterans. That's very important, and you have my commitment.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
I wanted to have you give us a little update on returning veterans that are being discharged from one of the military branches, and what efforts and initiatives does the department take to communicate with these returning veterans to let them know about educational opportunities, home loan opportunities, things of that nature. In other words, different types of benefits, mental health treatment. What's the outreach process that you use, and what can we do to enhance that?
Sir, the outreach process has many components to it. In addition to our staff members in the field that are connecting with our county veteran services officers and veteran organizations, we have a number of initiatives that we use to try to reach veterans. I mentioned about the DMV initiative, but we also have some technology proponents that we now have apps on MySpace, Twitter, and the like, because we found that some of our younger veterans feel more comfortable in dialing up something on their smartphone. And so we have apps there. If they dial into MyCalVet, they can get a reading on vet services in their location, address, phone numbers, even directions. Is provided by Google Earth. In reaching out to all the organizations, we found that the best way to reach some veterans and to prevent homelessness to cure homelessness is to prevent it from happening in the first place. So on a military basis, they have the TAP program, Transition Assistance Program, where 6 months out, 3 months out, 30 days out, we are connecting with veterans to find out where they're going to be living when they leave the military, provide them information about how to acquire services, and connect them with the services. It's important for all of us to reach out to veterans. And I talk to veteran organizations all the time. I've traveled around the state. I've probably attended every veteran organization state convention in the last 3 months. I've visited veteran hospitals, clinics. I've talked to groups, nonprofits. I've visited shelters. I've traveled a lot around the state. And what I found is that everybody wants to help veterans. And so to answer your question, everybody is reaching out to veterans. We have the lead in that. That's our responsibility. And we hope that with that help and assistance, we can reach most of the veterans out there. There's a lot of veterans there. In the state of California, you have about 2 million veterans. There's about 245,000 veterans receiving benefits right now in California. In addition to that, we have about 55,000 more in our database that we are working with to get their benefits. So this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. We hope, though, to reach veterans as quickly as we can so we can prevent them from being on the street and get the services they need as quick as possible.
Well, thank you very much, and I encourage you to keep up the good work in that area. My analysis and information that I have does indicate, though, that as recently as 2009, 2 years ago, the state auditor found that the department's outreach efforts were essentially inadequate. I hope they have improved in those 2 years since that report came out, and I would encourage you to do everything you can to continue and upgrade the outreach for our veterans. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Fuller, if not, let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee. Please. A number of our veterans here, welcome to you.
Bobby, you want to go first?
Sure, why not? Mr. Chairman, Bobby Price, Commander Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of California. I represent 89,000 combat veterans and 22,000 of their family members. And we're here to endorse the General for this position, but I do want you to know we don't take this lightly. We don't endorse lightly. This places a man responsible for 1.9 million veterans in this state that's already here and the future that are going to come back from these wars that we're fighting now. He's in a difficult position. The question that was asked about the outreach budget constraints cause those problems. You just cut us $9 million, or the legislature cut us $9 million. Most of that was the outreach efforts. The veteran service organizations do what we can. We're hurting for funds as well, and it's my pleasure to endorse the general for this position, and we're sure he is going to take the fight to where it needs, and he's going to stand up for the veterans of this state. Thank you.
As you do. Thank you. Sir.
My name is Hugh E. Crooks, Jr. I am commander of the Department of California, the American Legion. American Legion, if you don't know, is the largest veteran organization in the United States. In California, we have 100,000 members. I am, beside being a veteran, I am a former law enforcement officer of Los Angeles County with 29 years experience. Peter Gravitt is an individual that we feel has strong ideals, integrity, and good character. He cares about the needs of veterans, and we'll be able to work with him this is from the viewpoint of the veteran service organizations toward the mutual benefit of veterans within the state, which I may add, as you've already said, has one of the largest veteran population in the whole nation. The American Legion supports the confirmation of Major General Peter James Gravitt to be Secretary of CDVA.
Thank you very much for your service and your testimony. We appreciate it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Colonel Lorna Grease. I represent Military Officers Association of California. We have about 45 chapters throughout California, and we strongly support Secretary Gravitt to be confirmed as Secretary of CDVA. I've personally seen him interacting positively with veterans and veterans organizations throughout the state. And with his background, he'd be an asset to CDVA.
Thank you, Colonel. Appreciate it very much. Sir, briefly, if we may.
I'm Tom Richards. I'm a retired Marine officer. I was an enlisted Marine in Vietnam. I am the commander of the Legion of Valor chapter of California. I'm the chairman of the San Diego County United Veterans Council. And San Diego County is the second largest county in the entire United States, the second largest population of veterans in the entire United States. I'm also on the board of directors of the San Diego Veterans Coalition. Personally, I'm 60% disabled, including 30% PTSD. And I have had the opportunity to meet with Secretary Gravitt. I've observed him in a number of different meetings. And we in San Diego and the Legion of Valor are very proud to endorse him to be the Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your service. Sir.
Members and guests, my name is Ralph Kinsembi. I am the current commander of the Sacramento Area American GI Forum. I'm also a former employee of the Department of Veterans Affairs. I have much experience there. I was a former chief of personnel over at the Barstow Veterans Home. I was also manager of the veterans programs for approximately 10 years. So I'm very familiar with some of the issues that we have, some of the challenges that Secretary Gravitt is up against. We have about approximately 30,000 veterans discharging to California on a monthly basis. And so they add up very quickly. The outreach is minimal. We have approximately just under 2 million veterans that need to be outreached to. Some of the programs that we have not worked well. We need to change that a little bit. And I think that Secretary Gravitt can do that. One of the things that I do want to recognize him for here is that he took the time out of his busy schedule to meet with our group and some other groups from the local community that had expressed some serious concerns with some challenges at the department. And the challenges that we talked about, we didn't have time to go into all the details, but The most important thing here is that he's willing to extend his hand out, he's willing to communicate with us, and he's willing to work with us to come up with solutions that are necessary to meet the challenges of the veterans.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Next.
Good afternoon,
Briefly, please.
Mr. Chairman, members. Thank you. My name is Dr. Robert Cervantes. I'm also oftentimes referred to as Brigadier General retired with the California National Guard. I started out originally as a private and through a lot of effort and work, retired as a Brigadier General. Additionally, I served with the U.S. 6th Army in Communications and Electronics. I'm here to speak in support of General Gravitt. As the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, in my capacity in the National Guard, as well as my civilian capacity, I've had the opportunity, as also as a flag officer, had the opportunity to witness his command and his leadership. Without reservation, he is ethical, he's forward-looking, good character, good manager. And as far as money is concerned, he can squeeze the nickel until the buffalo moves. So I'm confident that he'll do a good job with that challenge.
Heard that one before.
I also believe that he will need all of these skills that he has to address the challenges that face the administration of the Department of Veterans Affairs, particularly as it regards to Latino veterans. It is no secret, and in fact it pains me, that he inherited a number of problems with regard to insufficient and lack of services and sometimes degenerate conduct when talking to Latino veterans, many veterans of which have their silver stars, their bronze stars, and to be treated in the manner they've been treated is uncalled for and makes me really angry. I know from his own personal experience that he has also withstood the bite of segregation and the effects that has had also in the military to many of us that served. Notwithstanding that, I believe that the skills he possesses, the experiences that he had, the ethical conduct that he's risen above all of these issues, that he will be responsive in addressing them. Therefore, I stand before you, here before you, to say that I believe that if there's any individual that can turn that agency around and make it responsive to Latino veterans, it is General Gravitt. And therefore, he has my full and unequivocal endorsement, and I ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier General. We appreciate your testimony very much.
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conity. I'm representing today the California Association of County Veteran Service Officers, which are the partners with the California Department of Veterans Affairs. I'm also representing the Vietnam Veterans of America, and we are in strong support of confirming General Gravitt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Conity. Are there any witnesses in opposition? If not, I would take a motion on Senator Alquist, of course.
Thank you. I'm sorry I was gone for a few minutes. I was supposed to present a bill in the probes, and it did not work out that way. So I'm here.
General, why don't you take a seat again?
First, let me thank you and your wife and all of the veterans here who have protected our country. I really appreciate what you do for us. I will be very brief. We had a very good conversation, you and I, in my office yesterday, and spoke quite a bit about traumatic brain injuries and post-traumatic stress disorder. And really, I know our pro tem has spoken here about mental health issues. And so I would simply say, in line with what I said yesterday, that whatever we can do to work with the federal government, and I know we're doing many things, to get more resources to help our soldiers as they come back from duty, I certainly would appreciate it. I know that you feel very strongly about that.
I do, Senator.
Thank you. Next thing, as the former chair of Sub 3, which at the time was aging, the Budget Subcommittee, which at the time was Health and Human Services and Labor and Veterans, I spent quite a bit of time on veterans' homes. And that's one area where I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done. with the use of technology. And this is way before your time when I was chair of that subcommittee, but I just would like to be sure that they are doing a little more in that area. And the next piece would be the veterans' homes, and what can we do to see that all the beds are really used, because certainly there are a lot of veterans who need to have that. Those are the major comments that I wanted to say, and again, thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Alquist, for those comments. Again, we thank you for your public service, for your distinguished military service obviously as a law enforcement officer in Los Angeles, and we appreciate you taking on this very difficult assignment, but so important. And again, you know, sort of the school that says, you know, you can't do everything, right? But what you do well and stand out. And I think on this issue, to focus on the issues of mental and emotional health for returning veterans and for existing veterans, and to really elevate that and to work with the Department of Health and Human Services and the mental health networks and the Mental Health Services Act would be a great contribution and legacy. A motion by Senator Alquist. Let's call the roll.
Senators Alquist. Alquist, aye. DeLeon. Fuller. Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon. Aye. Harmon, aye. Steinberg.
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That's 4-0. Congratulations. Your nomination will go to the floor, which again we'll attempt to take it up before we end this legislative session. And thank you again for your patience,
Thank
Secretary
you, sir.
Dravitz. You okay, Rita? Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Appreciate it. Okay. Last but certainly not least, we have Julie Sue, who is before the Rules Committee for confirmation as the Labor Commissioner of the State Division of Labor Standards Enforcement. And Ms. Sue, it is a pleasure to have you before the committee. We have known each other for more than a decade and have had the privilege of working on a very important public policy together, and I'm very pleased to see you. Let me give you the opportunity to introduce your family. I've had the privilege of meeting during the break, to make a brief opening statement, and then we want to explore some areas under your jurisdiction.
Thank you so much. So with me today are my parents, Ichen and Jun Sue.
Welcome.
My husband, Hernan Vera, who is president of Public Counsel in Los Angeles, the largest pro bono legal services organization in the country. And our two daughters, Li Mei, who is 10, and An Ling, who just turned 8.
Welcome especially to the young ladies here, okay? And I know it's been a long day, but special day for your mom, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. Senate Pro Tem and Chair Steinberg and members of the Rules Committee, I'm really honored to appear before you today and want to thank you for the time that you gave to me earlier this week to meet and talk about my background and some of my vision for the Labor Commissioner's office. I am the daughter of immigrants who settled in California for its warm weather and its sense of boundless opportunity. My family owned a dry cleaning and laundromat business, an ice cream shop, and other small businesses as I was growing up. I know well the struggles of small businesses who are the engine of our economy, and I also know the role that the state could play in helping them to thrive. My parents' hard work and sacrifice allowed me to attend Stanford University and to graduate from Harvard Law School, becoming the first attorney in my family. After graduation, I received a Skadden Fellowship to work at the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, where I was a civil rights attorney for 17 years. During that time, I worked to recover unpaid wages on behalf of women and men who do some of the most back-breaking work in our economy. I saw that, above all else, what workers want is an honest day's pay for an honest day's work, and to be treated with dignity. I also learned from working at a nonprofit organization for my entire career how to maximize impact with scarce resources, a skill that will serve me well as California's Labor Commissioner. While I bring many skills with me honed from my career battling against the underground economy, I understand the difference between my prior job as an advocate and my current job as a fair enforcer of the law. I am committed to fair and consistent application of the law and outreach and education to employers and employees alike. From the dozens of meetings I've had in my 4.5 months on the job, it is clear that the Labor Commissioner's role in ensuring a level playing field for all could not be more important at this difficult time. As a top priority, I have already been working to improve our reliance on empirical data and available intelligence to better focus our enforcement resources. We can and must do better in figuring out before we go out for inspections who is violating the law so that we do not spend time conducting audits of employers who are already in compliance. Employers who play by the rules should know that the state is on their side. And as Labor Secretary Marty Morgenstern said when he came before this committee, better coordination and streamlining of functions within the labor agencies is key. And we have begun to tackle that and have already made improvements. I also believe that focus on training of staff and improvement of morale is critical. With 18 offices across the state, I have been to Redding, Sacramento, Stockton, San Francisco, Oakland, Bakersfield, Los Angeles, Long Beach, and Santa Ana, and I have plans to visit all of my staff. I know that enforcement of labor laws is good, not only for employees and employers, but brings much-needed revenue to the state. These are responsibilities I take seriously. I am always open to your suggestions, and my door is always open. Or to modernize the metaphor, my cell phone is always on. Many people told me when I started this work that given the state of the economy, modest aspirations would be in order. But both my life and my work have taught me that the people of California deserve more than modest aspirations. I thank Governor Brown for this opportunity, and I intend to give everything I have to making sure the laws of this state are meaningful and real.
Thank you. Ms. Hsu, let us go around the horn here and take some questions. I know I have some myself. I'll begin with the Vice Chair, Senator Harman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have an opportunity to meet with Ms. Hsu yesterday at length, and I think I'll just pass for today. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Ahlquist.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was a pleasure meeting with you yesterday, and I would say to your daughters that your mom is stellar, and you're really lucky to have her. A few questions around the topic of the bad players. And first, I'd like to say congratulations to the wonderful effort you led when it came to the garment workers who were held behind the barbed wire in slave conditions. We really appreciate that. Also, particularly as a woman, I say thank you. How do you identify employers who are engaging in bad practices? And what are some of the traditional and emerging industries where there may be some bad actors?
I think that one of the biggest challenges for the state is that employers who are not compliant do not want to be found. And so the challenge is, how do we use the resources we have to get at the bad actors and to eliminate the unfair competition that they pose? I do believe that the state can make better use of data and surveillance that is available to law enforcement to be able to identify before we go out where the problem actors are. Historically, the Labor Commissioner's investigative resources have spent, in my mind, too much time at employers who were in full compliance. And the problem there is that it is not only not a smart use of state resources, it gives employers the impression that we're there to harass them or to spend time having them stop doing their business to answer questions. So the key, I think, is that ahead of time, we need to make sure that we use information that is available through better communication between state agencies, through whether it's through MOUs or whether it's just through building better and more fluid lines of communication, so that when our enforcement efforts are deployed, they are deployed to the employers who are already in violation of the law. It is also a priority, in my mind, of the Labor Commissioner's office to ensure that workers are getting paid at least the legal minimum. And I think that using the data that we have about employers and training our deputies to be able to interview workers, to look at payroll audits, to evaluate what workers are being paid is a really critical part of our role. And so ensuring that workers get the pay that they deserve and ensuring that the honest employers are not competing against those who are undercutting them through labor cost advantages is really important.
Thank you. And my last question is, when you find someone who's in violation, given that we're really talking about the underground economy a lot, it would be so easy for somebody just to take off. So how do you really ensure that they pay the penalty?
Obviously, our priority is not to put anybody out of business. It's to bring employers into compliance. And it has been a challenge to effectively collect from employers after citations are done. And so I do think that we can improve on that through the use of technology, which has been raised earlier today, to make sure that the information that we have about employers, again, that the state has as a whole is utilized in the most efficient, effective, and pragmatic way possible to get to collections quicker. You know, the longer it takes to start collections, the more likely it is that any assets that are there are going to be gone. And so I do think technology is very key to that.
Thank you.
Senator Fuller?
We've had a great discussion. I appreciate your energy and commitment. But I'm still, one of the questions that I'm still thinking about that we discussed was, you know, on the whole areas of confusion or things that are not clear in the law are probably what caused you the most problem. And when we determined that 40% of the cases that are being litigated seem to be unclear areas due to the meal and rest laws. When we talked, you said basically that was before the Supreme Court and you would be waiting for their ruling. But it occurs to me that as you're investigating, you're going to come upon these areas that are unclear in meal and rest. And how are you going to decide how to rule, given that the Supreme Court hasn't ruled and may not for quite a long time? How will you figure that out?
So, as we discussed, the issue of how meal and rest breaks will be interpreted is squarely before the California Supreme Court. And as we talked about, as the law enforcement agency, my job is to enforce the laws that you pass and that the courts interpret. And so I, like everybody else in the state, is awaiting that decision. In the meantime, I think you raise an important question, and our job is to follow the law as courts have interpreted to date and the cases that continue to stand in light of the Brinker case being before the California Supreme Court. So I absolutely intend to follow the law as it stands now and then to comply if the California Supreme Court decides to change that.
Thank you. Senator Fuller's question raises related issue for me in terms of priorities, because I note from my background briefing that prior to your coming into this job, that almost half of the citations that the department had issued in 2009, that's the base year here, almost 50% of them are workers' compensation citations, failure to provide workers' comp. As you look at the fact that you don't have infinite resources to be able to do your enforcement, where do you put your priority in terms of enforcement?
I do think that the failure to carry workers' compensation is an important enforcement priority. But the reality is that employers who do not carry workers' compensation often violate other labor laws as well. And so when the Labor Commissioner's Office engages in field enforcement efforts, I think it's really critical when we get to an employer who has that violation to also look at what else is going on at that workplace, including whether minimum wage is being paid, whether overtime is being paid, whether time cards are being kept accurately, whether workers are getting itemized deductions, whether hours are being shaved from actual work that's being done. And so that will require more investment of resources into looking for those kinds of violations. But in my mind, that's well worth it, because the wage floor is a key part of California's statement of what our public policy is. And so I think that when we must train our deputies to know how to conduct wage audits, to do effective wage audits, and to collect wages so that workers who've earned them get them back in their pockets. And again, the honest employers, the employers who I've met with, bar none, are concerned about the same thing that I'm concerned about, which is making sure that there's a level playing field for employers who want to play by the rules.
That's the last area that I want to talk to you a little bit about, because you take rightful pride in the fact that during your distinguished career that you have fought for the rights of workers and low-wage workers and immigrant workers, and I share that sense of pride in your work. And yet, there's a whole nother aspect of the underground economy and these issues, and that relates to the competitive disadvantage that a business that is following the rules has when competing against somebody who is cheating. And it not only impacts those businesses, but also, as we obviously struggle with continued fiscal challenges, the taxpayers are being forced to foot bills in so many other different ways because we're not collecting the taxes here. And so, to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I raised this issue and would like you to comment on it, because we may disagree, for example, on some of the laws that come to our respective floors, but there is a reality for a business that chooses, and you would hope they would, choose to follow the law, competing against someone who isn't. And so maybe if you can expand on that a little bit, and specifically, in your years as an advocate and during your months as the labor commissioner, do you receive complaints from employers attempting to compete with other employers who refuse to follow the rules?
Yes, and I believe that that is one of the most effective ways that we could improve on in identifying the bad actors. Because
be specific with me. In the range of work that you've done over the years, obviously you're responsive to complaints from employees, people being taken advantage of. But I'd like to hear a little bit about the real world out there in terms of what you hear from employers who are frustrated by the lack of compliance from competitors?
Well, I have met with now dozens and dozens of employers, employer associations, industry groups on the issues in particular industries, from car wash to janitorial to agriculture, to numerous industries, garment, and the employers who seek to play by the rules, who register with the state as they're required to, who pay wages as they're required to, who carry workers' compensation insurance as they're required to, find it enormously difficult to stay in business, frankly, because of the underground economy that they have to compete against, because of the employers who do not play by the same set of rules.
I want a concrete example.
Well, so when we met with the Western Car Wash Association, what they wanted to do was make sure that I was open to hearing communications from them about their competitors down the street who they knew not to be reporting the full number of employees that they had and not to be paying full wages. I mean, every one of these industry groups has talked about that. The janitorial and construction industries, I mean, especially in light of the economy and the devastating effect on the construction industry, the contractors who want to pay prevailing wages where they're required or the minimum wage where they're required are finding it nearly impossible to stay in business and to compete and to get the bids because of those who would undercut them, those who are bidding at below cost. These are clear indicators that those low bidders are intent on violating the law, are going to violate the law. And I think that it's incredibly critical for us to listen to the voices of those industry associations and employer groups who want a level playing field. I have not talked to a single employer in all of my career, and certainly not in the last 4.5 months, who say that they do not want rules. Everybody wants there to be a world of rules. They just want to know that everyone's going to play by the same ones. And the job of the labor commissioner is to be sure that everyone plays by the same rules. I also want to say that given my years as an advocate for employees, I think that there is tremendous common ground between employees and employers. And I think that's an obvious point that often gets left unstated. Employees and employers rely on each other daily. They're interdependent. Employees want good jobs and employers want good employees. And they rely on each other for productivity, for stability, and the more trust and the better the relationship is, the better it is for everybody. And I would like to see us expand on those areas of common ground.
Thank you. Let's hear from witnesses in support of the nominee.
Oh, stay. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members, Pete Conity representing the Pacific Association of Building Service Contractors and the Independent Maintenance Association Contractors. And we represent the ethical, janitorial, building service companies, and we agree with everything that Ms. Sue has said 100%. Because the unethical, the illegal contractors cheat the state out of money. The underground economy in this state is probably $9 to $10 billion, and I'm sure you'd love to have that $9 to $10 billion coming into the state treasury. They cheat the workers, they cheat the legitimate businessmen, they don't pay workers' comp, unemployment insurance, income tax, minimum wage. It's especially bad in the janitorial industry, and so we have met with Ms. Sue. We like what she's planning on doing, and we believe she will be fair to ethical employers and the employees. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Conity.
Mr. Chairman and members, Scott Wetch on behalf of the State Association of Electrical Workers, the California State Pipe Trades Council, and the Western States Council of Sheet Metal Workers, and the California Coalition of Utility Employees. To sum up my client's sentiments about this appointment is grateful. We are just honestly grateful that someone of Ms. Sue's caliber and accomplishment and resume would take this call to public service and be the labor commissioner. We think it sets a new standard for the labor commissioner's office, and we just have great expectations and just so wholeheartedly urge your confirmation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Angie Way on behalf of the California Labor Federation. Very proud to be here in support of Ms. Sue's confirmation. We could not think of a better, more qualified candidate for the most important position of Labor Commissioner. Ms. Sue is a fierce advocate for justice. and for fairness. And sometimes that breaks the employees' ways, and sometimes that'll break the employers' ways. We're not going to get everything we want and need out of this labor commissioner, but we know that she will be just and fair and apply the law judiciously and legally. We think that her experience, she's going to bring it to bear both on the administrative side and on the enforcement side. She's highly qualified, comes from a deep ground of experience to be our state's labor commissioner, and already in the 4.5 months that she's been there, we know that she's turned over every rock and pebble to make sure that that division is running smoothly and efficiently, that both workers are getting their wages due that have been sitting there stagnant for years, that money's finally getting back out into workers' pockets, and that she's making sure that we're getting the most bang for our buck of our limited public dollars by stretching our resources as far as we can. We wholeheartedly support her confirmation and hope that you will too.
Thank you very much, Ms. Way.
Mr. Chairman and members, Mark Schock with California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. I was going to echo a lot of Ms. Way's remarks, but instead I'll follow up on something you said earlier. You noted that approximately half of all the labor law citations by DLSE in the last 10 years have been for workers' compensation. In fact, that's been the case for much of the last 25 years. And if you also look at minimum wage and overtime citations issued by DLSE, they averaged about 100 a year. 100 a year in an economy with 18 million workers, 1 million employers, an underground economy that's estimated to be one of the biggest in the world, not just in the country. UCLA last year estimated that the total amount of wages stolen each week from low-wage and immigrant workers was $26 million a week. The RAND Corporation a decade ago said 25% of all the economic activity in LA County is in the underground economy. The past administrations, Democrat and Republican, have failed workers miserably because they're targeting checklist violations like workers' comp violations, which are important, but they're failing to go after the underlying anti-competitive aspect of the underground economy, which is the massive theft of wages every day from low-wage workers in agriculture and garment, et cetera. So we welcome Ms. Sue's appointment.
Thank you.
We look forward to working with her.
Thank you, Mr. Schock. Mr. Mejia.
Mr. Chairman and members, Jose Mejia, California State Council of Labor's in proud support of Ms. Sue. Her passion certainly is best and compared to none. Her background obviously says it all, and for all the reasons that were already stated, we're in strong support and urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Jeremy Smith on behalf of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. I think Scott hit it around the, made a very good point, which is it's not just about enforcing labor laws for labor. Obviously, that's the good outcome. We want to make sure our workers are paid the wages they're due. But enforcing the labor laws for the good businesses in this state that play by the rules, the thousands of good businesses, and to ensure that the bad businesses out there who ignore the law are held accountable. I think that it's very important to have somebody as labor commissioner there to do that. She's pro-business, and she's pro-good business. And that's what's important to have in this position. So we're happy to support her today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mariko Yoshihara with the California Employment Lawyers Association. We're also very strongly supporting this confirmation. And we think Ms. Sue is a tireless advocate, which is exactly what we need right now. And we've met with her several times in the past few months, and we are really excited and impressed with all her ideas, and we are looking forward to collaborating with her in the future, and we strongly urge your support as well.
Thank you very much.
Judith Michaels, California Federation of Teachers, in support of Julia Sue as Labor Commissioner. And just another point of view that we have is we do have laws on the books that allow parents to participate in the education of their children. Many students come from single-parent homes. Those people work. It's important to have a labor commissioner to enforce the laws we have on the books that allow parents to participate.
Thank you.
Tim Kremens, Operating Engineers, in full support. We met with Ms. Sue, or my leadership met with Ms. Sue also, and we walked away very impressed, and that alone is a big accomplishment, I think, with our group. What I'd like to emphasize, she's willing to let let us compete. And at the end of the day, our skills should compete and trump anything, and we're very impressed. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Shane Gussman on behalf of the Teamsters, United Food and Commercial Workers, the Machinists, the Amalgamated Transit Union, and others, all in strong support of confirmation here. We have been advocates over the years for a number of important laws to be passed, but none of those laws do any good unless we have vigorous enforcement in this state, and we are confident that that will take place under her leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Is there any opposition, witnesses in opposition to the nominee? If not, let me suggest procedurally what we do from here. We have a member of the Rules Committee who is absent for personal reasons today who will be back here next Wednesday. Without objection, I want to put off the vote on Ms. Su's nomination to the very first item of business next Wednesday, and I'm confident that next Wednesday that the nomination will pass to the floor. We're not up against any tight deadlines, although I'm sure you're anxious, but I just want to say I fully support your nomination. I think the state is lucky to have someone of your passion, intellect, and your emphasis on fairness, and to go after only those that are violating the law. Again, I think point's been made more than one time that this issue of the underground economy is not just an issue of protecting workers, though it's that. It's also an issue about fairness for employers and for taxpayers. And regardless of where different colleagues stand on your particular nomination, though, I would hope that you'd go through unanimously. This should be a bipartisan issue. It really should, and hopefully it will. And we'll take it up next Wednesday and look forward to your long service.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sue. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And thank you to the family, okay? All right, give her a hand. Very, very good. I assume we can record the daughters in support of the nomination as well, for the record. All right. We have completed today's agenda around gubernatorial appointments having to appear today. As we look at items 3 with many subletters through 15, are there any items that the members are not ready to vote on today or want to set aside? You mentioned one, Senator Harmon. No, there was a walk-on. Okay, that was the walk-on. We'll hold off on the walk-on until. But is there anything else on the list here? There's not. Okay, so then I'll take a motion for items 3 through 15. So moved by Senator Harmon. Please call the roll.
Senators Alquist? Alquist, aye. DeLeon? Fuller? Aye. Fuller, aye. Harmon? Aye. Harmon, aye. Steinberg?
Aye.
Steinberg, aye.
That's 4-0. Those all pass. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chairman, we have what we call a walk-on. In this
yes, Senator De Leon's resolution.
And could we put that over for 1 week? I don't know whether he has this group scheduled to come for a resolution presentation on August 22nd, which is next Monday, I believe. I don't want to make problems, but we've tried to find some information about this group whose initials are HULA, and
is it possible that
we're not finding anything?
Right.
And we're just
okay. So you wanted some more information, which is reasonable. So you get that information. Is there a way then we might address this informally, so that if so that
yes.
Senator De Leon can present the resolution?
That'd be fine.
Okay.
See if we can get something from him.
Very good. Okay. So we'll do that. Is there anything else to come before the committee? I'm sorry. We have reference of bills.
And other.
Oh, that. I think I did. Did I miss?
Did we do all of them?
I did.
Part of all of them. Okay.
I did 3 through 15.
We need reference.
So that leaves number 1. I didn't do number 1. Reference of bills. Yes, moved. Substitute. Can we substitute the unanimous roll call, please, without objection? Very good. If there's nothing else, there's no...
One item, just to sort of follow up on earlier discussions about the emergency telephone operation in the Senate under the direction of Sergeant Arms. Could we have an update report on that at the next meeting, please?
Sure.
Status report. Thank you.
Sure. There's also obviously been some news about the Legislative Open Records Act. And I know that the Senate Rules Committee has gotten some requests for budgets, et cetera, and the committee may want to have a discussion at some point about that as well.
I would like to have that
probably
also.
in the open.
I'd like to have that discussion next week also,
this
if we
be
could.
The task force. Anyways, we will. All right, thank you all. Welcome back. We're adjourned.